Hello, Giants fans, and welcome to your Monday edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on Big Blue View Radio. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe on YouTube, and if you're listening on Big Blue View Radio, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts as well. All right, with the free agency starting on Monday, the negotiating window when supposedly no deals are actually done. We're going to have a special guest today. I've got Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post. How you doing, Ryan? Thank you much for doing this on short notice for me.
What's that, bad? How are you?
I'm good. So I'm jealous. Nice work the other day getting the Daniel Jones news out there first. Would you beat Rappaport and Garofalo and all of them by about 30 seconds on Twitter?
Yep, 30 seconds is everything in our world. Yeah.
It is. It's amazing. I mean, back in the day when, 30 years ago when I was actually working in the newspaper business, you could get a scoop and it lasted all day.
Yeah, not anymore. No.
Now it lasts about as long as it takes you to type it and post it on Twitter.
Yeah, that's it. I actually probably could have had it by 90 seconds, but the person who texted me, I said, how sure are you about this, et cetera, et cetera. And then Joe Shane said the deal was finalized at 3:53, and I went back and I looked at my tweet and it was 3:53. So I must have found out 20 seconds after the deal was signed. So
wow, nice. So you're the man. So we don't need Rappaport and Schefter.
I don't know about that. 1 in 1,000 for me, 1,000 for them, 1 for me.
Oh, hey, you take the wins when you can get them. Hey, let's talk a little bit of free agency. And before we get directly into free agency, I don't remember if you were on Joe's call the other day, the day after the Jones news, but he said something that I thought was kind of interesting. He was talking about this offseason, this free agency, this draft, really in his mind sort of being the start of his build, which I took that as like they were just trying to survive a year ago. And I think they were shocked to go 9-7-1 and have the year that they did. But I just found it interesting that he said that really this is the start of everything for him.
It's something that usually teams say after a bad season, like when they want to start, like, oh, that first year didn't count. Don't start the clock on me until year 2 so that my 2 or 3 year window really starts now. That's what teams who had a bad season usually say. That's what you heard from the Jets after Joe Douglas's first year. It was like, well, he didn't have the draft. They hired him after the draft, so that first year doesn't count. You don't usually hear that after a successful first year. But I think the difference is it's true here. Like, this is an excuse making for Joe Shane. He has nothing to make excuses for. They were good last year.
Right.
Certainly better than expected. That's just the truth, is that this really is the start of their regime, because they were so salary cap handcuffed last year that they couldn't do anything. The joke Joe Shane made that I thought was hilarious was he hears now that a guy might want $2.5 million, and he's all excited that they could sign him. A $2.5 million player is like a fringe starter, and they couldn't even afford that guy last year. They were so hamstrung, it was like minimum deals or nothing. So Forget the fact that he might be able to spend $20 million on a player. He can spend $2.5 million, and he's excited. That shows you how hamstrung they were last year, and just kind of how much more he can put his fingerprints on this roster.
Yeah, he can actually go out and identify some players. I thought he said something during the season about not being able to chase guys, and we know how bad their run defense was. And I kept thinking he's got to be talking about Linval Joseph. Signing a guy like Linval Joseph in the middle of the season, because with the connection to the Giants and the connection to Andre Patterson, if they had more than a nickel to spend, I'd have thought they'd have gone after somebody like that.
Yeah, and I think he got like a $2 million contract with
Mhm.
the Eagles. The Giants couldn't do it.
Right.
The Giants
Right.
couldn't do it. They would have had to restructure Kenny Golladay, and they basically said, no matter what, we're not restructuring Kenny Golladay. No matter what players it costs us, how many wins it costs us, we're not touching Kenny Galladay's contract.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned Galladay, and Joe said the other day that they haven't made a decision, but he kind of said they've made the decision that they're just going to go ahead and leave him as a pre-June 1 cut. And I understand that. I don't know how you feel about that, but I certainly understand it, because then they're just done with the Galladay money and they don't carry it into 2024. I think it applies to everything with Joe Shane and with the Giants now. They're not looking at it like the fan base does, like it's all about 2023. It's the
No, it
upcoming
certainly is
season.
not. Yeah.
It's about the long term. It's not really about going from 9 wins to Super Bowl contention. It's still about building, and I'm just curious, do you get the same impression with, the folks that you talk to? It's like they're not thinking Super Bowl in 2023.
No, I totally agree. I mean, privately, they even acknowledge they might take a step backwards, but they're certainly not thinking Super Bowl. They're ready to make the jump to the Super Bowl, no matter if ownership said we're back at the end of the season or not. They just meant back to being competitive and respectable. And no, I totally agree with you. I think with Galladay, they just want to be rid of all of Gettleman's mistakes as early as possible. They want their own clean slate. That's what it's about now. To use a Shane phrase, taking your medicine this year. That's what that's about. Not to mention, they don't need any more dead money in 2024, because that's when Daniel Jones's cap hit is like $78 million. I'm exaggerating, obviously. I think it's like
Yeah.
40. I think it's $48 million.
Yeah, it is. It is mostly covered. I think it is covered by the jump in the salary cap.
Yeah.
But I think the jump in his cap hit almost entirely covers the jump in the salary cap itself.
So that's before you get to what will be Saquon's jump in his cap hit, and any other guys they signed this year who have a jump in their cap hit. So they're going to be tight against the cap next year.
Absolutely. What do you think is going to happen here with Saquon? I would think they would like to have something done if they're going to get a long-term deal done with Saquon. I would think they'd like to have something done by Wednesday. Do you think they'll meet that?
Wednesday is certainly the goal. They honestly, both sides would have liked to have it done already. They're not budging. I mean, the Giants particularly here have drawn a line in the sand that they did not draw with Daniel. They drew a line in the sand with Daniel and then went past the line in the sand. So it was really like a line in chalk. And with Saquon, they've been much more hard line. He hasn't come down as much as he wanted to be the top paid running back in October. He's come down a little. He hasn't come down to where they are. I think the Giants offer right now is about $13 million per year. Saquon's still higher than that. Really, he wants a 4-year deal. They want a 3-year deal. Then there's how much guaranteed money and when does it pay out? When does it guarantee, that year or the year before? There's all that complicated stuff. I think they get a deal done by Wednesday, but I'm 60-40. They think they do. It's certainly not a sure thing.
Yeah, Joe has made it obvious since the day after the season ended that Daniel was always the priority, and I think rightly so. And I think that, if you backed Joe into a corner and wouldn't let him out until he told you the truth, I think he would probably tell you that if push came to shove, he'd walk away from Saquon.
I would agree. I think Saquon Barkley is, for as long as Joe Shane is the Giants general manager, Saquon Barkley will be the only, and he could be the GM 20 years. Saquon Barkley will be Joe Shane's only highly paid workhorse number 1 running back. They're making exceptions for Saquon based on the fact that he's an awesome talent, the fact that he's an awesome dude, the fact that he's the face of the franchise, the fact that the locker room loves him, the fact that Daniel Jones loves him, the fact that He's their highest selling jersey guy. He's a Walter Payton Man of the Year. All these reasons are exceptions to what Joe Schoen believes, which is recycle your running backs every 3 or 4 years and have a rotation. So I think they'll get it done, but after Saquon, there won't be another Saquon for as long as Joe Schoen's in charge.
Absolutely. And, it's just one of those deals where he was already here. He's already entrenched.
Correct.
And
there's an exception to every rule, and he's the exception of the rule.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you before we get to the open market, what's in your mind? What's the latest on Julian Love and Darius Slayton? I'm guessing maybe one, but not both of those guys are going to be back.
I don't think either will be back, honestly. I mean, the Giants haven't valued Darius Slayton pretty much since last year when they basically tried to run him off the team until he took a pay cut. Came back, had a really great year. It was a fun story for guys like me and you to write about a guy who was written off and came back. They still don't really seem to value him, not at the price that the rest of the league will. Look, it's a very thin receiver free agent market, which helps Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton has two things that'll help him. He's got speed and he creates separation. Those things are really, really important. And some other team is going to value those more than the Giants, who will still have hard time shaking off the fact that, hey, this is true. Darius Slayton drops a lot of passes. He does. He drops a lot of passes. Mm-hmm. And that's something that'll stick in the Giants' head more than it'll stick in another team's head. I think he's a good player. I really do. I think he's a good number 2 / if you have he's probably a good number 3 receiver. If you have a good slot guy who's a 1 or a 2, then he's a good outside number 3, if that makes sense. So, or he could be a number 2. I mean, he could be a number 2. So, yeah, I think he'll get paid. And then Julian Love, man, every time you hear Joe Schoen talk, he talks about how deep the safety market is.
Absolutely.
He talks about how deep the safety market is. It sounds like he thinks he's going to get a bargain somewhere. Obviously, Jordan Poyer is a guy he's very familiar with. I think he'll get top money to leave Buffalo, so I don't think he'll come. But if they wanted a top guy, I think it would be Poyer, not Julian Love. And I think he'll probably be looking for a bargain once that market thins out on Wednesday, who is left. I don't think Julian Love will be back. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if he ends up in his hometown team with Chicago.
Absolutely. I mean, he was on Sirius XM the other day, and he said, look, I'm human and the money matters. And
he's only going to get one shot.
That's it. And it's the same with Darius Slayton, to be honest.
Correct.
With you. He's going to get one shot at a decent deal that'll set him up for the rest of his life.
Correct.
And after the Giants basically, made him take the minimum last year and then basically made him low guy on the totem pole and didn't use him until they had no other choice.
That's it.
I certainly couldn't blame him for moving on.
I think they'll both. Yeah, I think they'll both be gone. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about what the Giants might actually be shopping for. And we talked a little bit about, Joe saying that that he's got a little bit more money to spend. He said he's not, just shopping for veteran minimum guys. And I wondered how that remark played with some of those guys who signed those veteran minimum contracts last year. But anyway, everybody has talked about, and Joe keeps talking about, when you ask him, about the offseason and the draft, and he keeps saying everybody keeps talking about wide receiver, but we've got a lot more than wide receiver to do. And I look at free agency, and I think the Giants' money is going to be spent on defense. I don't know. What's your guess?
My guess would be that they'll sign a receiver, but it won't be anywhere near the top of the market. Is it an aging veteran like an Adam Thielen? Is it a guy entering his 5th year who hasn't hit his prime yet, like a McCole Hardman? I don't know, but it isn't going to be Jacoby Myers. It isn't going to be Juju Smith-Schuster. It isn't going to be one of these guys who's going to get overpaid because they're the top options on a thin market. Where do I think the Giants will prioritize? I'll give you 3 positions I think they could play towards the middle upper tier of the market. I don't think the Giants will give anybody, any free agent will get the top player at X position is coming to the Giants. I don't think that's going to happen. Like,
I don't think the money is there, even though they're okay cap space wise with once they get the Galladay money, and if they can get Saquon done, and maybe if they extend limbs, but they're okay, but they're not, they're not blank check. They're not in a place to write a blank check at this point.
I'll give you the 3 positions. I think they're going to target a tight end, a pass catching tight end to go with Daniel Bellinger. Is that Mike Gesicki? If he's not the top tight end, he's probably like 3-4 on the free agent market. I think that's a possibility. Is it inside linebacker? I think it is. So the top inside linebackers are the 2 veterans, Bobby Wagner and Levante David. I don't think either of those guys is coming to the Giants. Could that next tier of Tremaine Edmonds, Buffalo connection, obviously, or the name I've heard a lot is TJ Edwards tied to the Giants, that they could steal him from the Eagles. That's a name I've heard connected to the Giants. And then cornerback, I don't think they're in the James Bradbury market. He's like the top guy. Trying to think who the other top corners are. Jamel Dean. Who's the other top corners?
I don't have the list in front of me.
I do. Hold on. Bradbury, Jamel Dean, Sutton from the Steelers, I think is a possibility for the Giants. Cameron Sutton. I think if you wiped out Bradbury and Dean, who I think are both going to get paid relatively well, Cameron Sutton is a guy like from the Steelers. He's a 6-year veteran. He's just kind of starting to hit his prime. He's a guy I could see landing with the Giants.
I think, you mentioned Wagner and some of those guys, and I think the reality of it is we talked a little bit about where the Giants are. And my thing with when I get asked about it is look for guys with upside, look for guys with futures, look for guys who are coming into their best years, not guys who are on the other side of their best years, because the Giants aren't in that, looking for that final piece sort of, put us over the top and win a Super Bowl yet.
Agreed. Yep. No, exactly. That's it. So they're not signing Patrick Peterson. Maybe they're signing Jonathan Jones from the Patriots. Something like maybe they're signing Shaq Griffin who just got cut by the Jaguars. They're not signing, Marcus Peters, who's 31, that kind of thing. So the 3 positions I think they'll target, probably even more so than receiver, are tight end, inside linebacker, and corner.
Yeah, I actually like the idea of tight end if they can find a guy that complements Daniel Bellinger's skill set. That's one I get asked all the time. Is Bellinger the answer at tight end? And I say he's part of it.
That's exactly what I would say.
He's part of it, but he's not ever going to be that all-pro caliber guy.
That's how I feel. He's a good part of the solution. You pair him up with like a Gesicki, who's basically a big slot receiver. And I think you got something good there.
Yeah, or if you wanted to spin forward to the draft, if they don't get their guy, a guy like Dalton Kincaid out of Utah might be a possibility.
I don't see them use. He'll be a 1st-round pick. I think Joe Shane is one of those guys. He'll be drafting corners, offensive linemen, and defensive linemen and receivers with his premium picks. He'll be copying that Howie Roseman mold of, you don't use 1st-round picks on tight ends and running backs and inside linebackers. I think he'll be building. You stop what is it? You protect the passer, you rush the passer, you stop the pass, and you throw the ball. Those 4 things. That's what he'll be.
Right. Yep.
That's where he'll be using his premium picks.
Yeah, pretty much. I do a million mock drafts. I do one every week, and I wind up just throwing names out at some points because it's like I've got to do some. I can't do the same mock every week. What's the point of that? But Kincaid's interesting, but I think you're right. I think the Giants aren't using a pick at 25 on a tight end.
Now, look, I won't be surprised if one of their third-round picks is a tight end, and I won't be surprised if one of their third-round picks is a running back, regardless of whether they get Saquon's long-term or not. I'd expect a day 2 running back somewhere.
Yeah, I didn't really want to get into the draft too much yet, but I think I agree with you there. And I think that's whether they get Saquon and whether they get the deal done with Saquon or not. I think they've got to go running back. I think they've got to upgrade behind him. Brightwell is just not the answer, and I don't know how much more you get out of Matt Breida if you even bring him back.
Agreed.
So I think they've got to upgrade and maybe start planning for the day Saquon's not there.
Agreed.
Gotta ask, and I'm not going to ask what you're hearing. I'm going to ask what you think about Odell Beckham to the Giants. I have to ask. I have to. I know what I think, and people are tired of hearing me say it. So I'm gonna let you have the floor on this one.
I guess I'll tell you both. What I'm hearing is not to rule it out. That especially if Saquon's here, especially if they bring back Sterling Shepard, who wants to come back, they just want him to prove he's healthy, so he probably won't resign till like July, when he can pass a physical. I'm hearing not to rule it out. What do I think? I think they should stay away from it as far as possible. He's probably, if he's healthy, the highest ceiling receiver on what we've already said is a depressed market. Like, who would I rather have, a healthy Odell Beckham or Jacoby Myers or Juju Smith-Schuster or whoever else is out there? I'd rather have a healthy Odell Beckham from a player standpoint. I just don't think they need to go down the road of all of a sudden now they have a player who's bigger than the team again. And look, media like myself, were partly responsible for making that monster. But all of a sudden it'll be about Odell again every day, every practice, every game. Obviously, as we learned last year, he's more mature stuff is totally overblown. If you saw what happened with him on the plane, I don't know how much. I saw the highlights of his videos. I mean, he looked like he was running around great. He has a long injury history. He has 12 touchdowns in his last 5 years. He hasn't been that productive. He's still going to cause a lot of headaches. I would stay away from it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to agree with you. And I've said it again and again. He's not the player that he used to be. And maybe in 2016, you could overlook the headaches because of the production.
Exactly.
But I don't think the production is enough to warrant putting up with the rest of it anymore. So I'm with you. Run in the opposite direction. But I will say this.
Now, if he's giving them some sort of discount, if you're telling me you're getting Odell on a 1 year, $3 million contract, sure. But
sure.
I assume he's looking for another monster. I assume he's looking for another 4 years and $60 million or something like that.
Somebody will give him a good payday. Yeah. But the other thing that I said way back into last year is whether they're really, really serious about being in this market or not. I think just because of the fan base, because of the media interest, because they're going to get asked about it 100 times, I actually think the Giants are playing this pretty well because they're at least showing interest. They're at least, when it's all said and done, if he's not a Giant, they're going to at least be able to say, we did our due diligence. We made an effort. It just didn't work out.
Totally agree.
So that's kind of an interesting one. So we kind of covered, we covered a lot of the free agent stuff. If there's a big move in free agency for the Giants that we haven't talked about, or a big offseason move we haven't talked about, you have a thought on where it might come?
I think it's a trade for a receiver. That's what I think it is. I think is it Gabe Davis? Is it I'm trying to think who else might be available. Somebody gave me a name. Is it Keenan Allen? Is it somebody gave me a name the other day and I can't think of what the name, but point being, I think it's a trade for a receiver. It's
we know it's not going to be DeAndre Hopkins. It's not going to be Hopkins.
They're not taking on DeAndre Hopkins and his they're not taking on DeAndre Hopkins and his salary cap hit and his steroid suspension. I mean, at that point, you might as well take back Odell Beckham.
Well, he's also another one of those guys that we talked about earlier who has more of a past than he does a future.
Here's the name somebody gave me. Is Chris Godwin available? If they're starting over with, I just looked it up for you in my notes. Someone said to me, if they're starting over with Kyle Trask, do they need Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, or are they starting over completely? And if Godwin's available, you can put him down as somebody the Giants would definitely be interested in.
What is he? He's still 26, 27 years old, I think, isn't he? So
look at
Godwin.
Looking him up looking him up right now. Chris Godwin is coming off a year with 1,000. He had 104 catches for 1,000 yards, so he was dominant again, even coming off injury and whatnot.
27.
He's 27, and his contract is. Chris Godwin's contract is he signed through it looks like next year. So he signed through 24 on a 3-year, $60 million contract. So you could get him for 2 seasons and then work out, some sort of extension. That would be a guy I think the Giants would give up premium assets for. So you're asking me a trade. I'll say a Chris Godwin trade is the move that if a big move happens, that's what it is.
All right, we're gonna hold you that, and we'll make sure that.
But I'm still gonna take credit if it's Gabe Davis or if it's Keenan Allen or somebody else. If it's Godwin, I'll come back and do victory laps for you.
Well, look, Big Blue View started in 2007. All right, we launched in 2007, so we still take full credit for that Super Bowl. So we can give you props. We can give you credit, for any of those big deals that's
what I would think the move. I think the 3 top receivers in the draft, Johnston, Jackson Smith and the Jigba, and the third guy, again, a name is escaping me.
Addison, the kid from UFC.
Jordan Addison. I think all 3 of those guys will be gone by 25. So I don't think the Giants will stretch for a receiver. I don't think they'll pay the top of the market unless it's Odell. But again, I'd still put that at unlikely. I don't think they'll pay the top of a market for one. So I think they're going to get their receiver through a trade. And Joe Shane's shown that he's constantly working the trade market. So I think that's a very real possibility. Plus, some guys will shake free here in the next. Corey Davis is going to get released. Is he a guy the Giants take a look at from the Jets? So some guys will shake free here in the next week or so. As teams start adding guys, they'll start cutting guys.
Yeah. Just last thing for you. Are you surprised that the Giants haven't done something with Leonard Williams yet?
No, because Leonard Williams is and when I say Leonard Williams, I mean Leonard Williams' team, his agents, etc., is very hard to negotiate with. I mean, we've seen from Leonard Williams that if you're going to try to now look, they could just convert X number of dollars into a signing bonus without they don't need permission to do that kind of restructure. But if they want to extend him or pay cut him or do anything that he needs permission for, we've seen the Giants had to franchise tag him twice. They give you 0 discount. They give you not a penny off. So they're very hard to deal with. They went down to the absolute wire with the Giants to get that 3-year, $63 million deal done a couple years ago. They certainly aren't going to say, oh, you need to get it done by Monday on your end. Well, let's expedite that for you. No, they're going to say you need to get it done on your end. Well, then you got to pay us more for us to help you get it done on your timetable rather than our timetable. So no, I'm not surprised at all because in my 5 years, he's negotiated the best out of anybody with the Giants in my 5 years covering the team. He's bled more money out of them than anybody. Good player, but I mean, he really knows how to work the system. So no, I'm not surprised at all that unless it's just going to be something they do that doesn't require his approval, I'm not surprised they haven't met in the middle yet.
All right, absolutely. So the fun starts Monday morning, and we'll be anxiously looking to see what happens. Ryan, I really appreciate you spending some time with me. Just let the folks know where you are on Twitter and all that, if they don't already know.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I'm at Twitter. I'm at RY, the first letters of Ryan, and then Dunleavy, Dunleavy, at Ryan Dunleavy. And obviously all of our Giants coverage. Can't beat the quantity of it. It's tons of it at nypost.com.
And but why don't you have a podcast yet?
I
know Schwartz does, but
Schwartz
you don't have your own.
Yeah, Schwartz and Lawrence Tynes are in the podcast business. It's a really good listen. Former player and Paul, who's been on the beat since '94. I had a podcast when I was at NJ.com. I'll let them handle the podcasting. Let guys like you handle the podcasting. It's not my forte.
Well, it's I'm an old writer. It's not mine either, but it's one of those things that when you do what I do and the way the business is now, it's a necessary evil.
Yeah.
We do what we can and we do the best we can. And like I said, I appreciate your hopping on. So thanks again. And Giants fans, thank you as always for listening. Please take care of each other. Stay safe out there, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.